right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Living Better podcast. Today we have an exciting guest that I've been looking forward to pick his brain. We are with the Dr. Jacques Dallaire. He is a performance specialist with over 49 or around 49 years of experience and bringing people to the next level in terms of performance. He worked with professional race car drivers, athletes, special force, military personnel, police officers, and so much more that I don't even know about. So why don't we introduce you? You're the president and CEO of Prime Performance, which is a company dedicated to either individual coaching or group coaching to enhance people's performance on various levels and various areas. So what about we start by you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you, Mathieu. As you said, my name is Jacques Dallaire, and I am the president of Performance Prime. Mm-hmm. And I've been working over almost 5 decades in the high-performance world, mostly. I've had the opportunity to deal with many thousands of high-performance people from many different walks of life, as you identified some of those characters, from the corporate world and the business community to the arts and entertainment world to the special forces and military community and a variety of Olympic and professional athletes of all kinds. So I've had the opportunity over that time to work with many different people from many different walks of life all over the globe. And that experience has given me the opportunity to understand how we as the human being mentally sabotage our own performance.
Yes.
I'm not a psychologist, nor am I a psychiatrist. I have a PhD in performance physiology, exercise physiology. But my broad and vast experience in the high performance world has given me the opportunity to understand a simple framework that I use in the education of my clients that can help them to understand how they mentally sabotage their own performance and how they can avoid that trap. Because all of us are really good at mentally sabotaging ourselves and we don't even realize how we're doing it.
Yes, exactly. So if we go to that framework, or in your experience, what have you noticed that people in general do the most, which affects their performance?
I think it's fair to say that it doesn't matter what culture people are from, what language they speak, how old they are, whether it's a man or woman, or what their job is.
Yeah.
The key things that undermine our ability to perform in those moments when it matters. You know, what's the difference between that moment of performance virtuosity where at the end we feel like punching our fist into the air and yelling, yes, why can't it always be that way? Mm-hmm. Compared to those many other times where our performance might be good, but not exceptional, or it might even be poor. What's the main difference? How do we explain the reason why someone does so well in a practice or rehearsal environment only to go to the big event and choke?
Yes.
And then come back to practice or rehearsal afterwards and win practice again. Yep. What is it that happens? Is it because we forget how to do it on Saturday afternoon, what we did so effectively on Saturday morning? Did we lose the ability in the afternoon that we had in the morning and then miraculously find it again the following morning?
Yeah.
Of course, that's not the case.
Nope.
We don't forget how to do it. We don't lose the ability and then find it again. Something happens that corrupts the mindset that allows us to bring our skill sets to bear in that moment of the big performance.
Yep.
And when I pose the question, what is it that gets in the way and stops you from delivering those moments of virtuosity? Universally, 100% of the time, when I pose that question in a seminar environment, I hear the same 2 things. The first thing is fear, self-doubt, lack of confidence, worry over the consequences of what I'm doing, worry over the consequences of failure. That's the first thing 100% of the time that people say to me. in answer to that question. And this is from world-class performers and teams.
Yeah.
When they do mentally shoot themselves in the foot, this is the first thing that people reference as one of the underlying causes for that self-sabotage. The second thing...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The second thing is an inability to be correctly focused. They say, when I'm distracted, when I'm not connected, when I'm not fully present and engaged with what I'm doing, those distractions lead me to make mistakes and I don't do my best work. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting? Doesn't matter. Culture, language, gender, job.
That's very interesting. Thing. Yeah. And why do you think people have those ideas? Like, why do you think people fear of success, or on a general level, why do people fear failure when they do something?
Because success is so important and failure is so negative. Look at what we're facing right now in this COVID-19 situation. Mm-hmm. The consequences of failure means I might not be able to provide for my family, or someone in my family might get grievously sick or die. The consequences are huge. And there's so much that's outside of our control.
Yeah.
That's why people worry. Why? Because the consequences are dire and the results are so darn important. And it's sadly ironic because it is one of the most fundamentally flawed arguments that we create in our own mind, that worry is good. It's good to be worried about results. In fact, society teaches us that we should be.
Yes.
Because worrying about how we do, worrying about outcome and results, means that we care.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you see someone who doesn't seem to be torn apart by failure, or wig out when they don't achieve what they're trying to achieve, when they don't whine about it and bemoan it and talk negatively about the fact that they didn't get it done. What's our first thought when we don't see someone do that? Obviously, the guy doesn't care, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And yet that's the greatest fallacy there is, because the truth is the person who doesn't go to pieces about failure is actually the person who understands the performance equation better. And that person is more likely to be the high performer. Wow. And yet, results are so important. We insist on worrying about outcome. And the fundamental truth is we cannot control outcome because we can't control the many things that we can't control.
Yeah, it's an automatic thought process that we all do have in us that actually sabotages our results, like you're saying. And I watched your webinar the other day, and I think that it'd be interesting we talk about your framework equation in terms of enhancing performance. So A times B equal the results, right? So if we talk about this, well, let's talk about what you designed around that framework that works for you, well, your clients and the people that you are training.
Well, Mathieu, the truth is I'm a simple-minded person.
Yeah.
So my job is to simplify things as much as I possibly can so that I can understand it.
Yeah.
And if I understand it, then I'm pretty sure just about everybody else can understand it. So my goal in creating this simple equation was to use it as a backbone, as a framework to help in the education process of my clients, to help them to understand how they mentally sabotage themselves and how they can avoid it. I created this simple equation, A times B equals results. And I refer to it as the performance equation over 30 years ago.
Okay.
And my initial creation was an intellectual one. It came to me one day and I was thinking about how do I express this in a way that people can wrap their heads around.
Yep.
And I came up with this simple equation as a way of framing the different pieces so that people can look at them and how they fit together. Because understanding how the pieces of the mental skills puzzle fit together and what its impact is on performance is the fundamental interest that my clients have. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not trying to get into their head and tell them about their family history and all the rest. Their interest in coming to visit with me is to understand this simple issue. Yep. How do I think in a way that I optimize my performance rather than sabotage it? That's what I'm interested in. All the other stuff, I can go see a counselor if I need to.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not belittling that, but that's not my goal. My goal is a very pragmatic, performance-centered goal. Yeah. Does psychological concept fit into it? Absolutely. How could it not? Mm-hmm. But that's not the goal. And what was interesting is most people intellectually can understand the equation, and I'm going to explain it in simple terms in just a moment. And when I framed it, it was an intellectual exercise. Okay. But it's not until I own myself personally accepted the fundamental truth of it emotionally. That is the day that I eliminated performance anxiety from my life completely.
Wow.
And I'll explain why. The equation reads A times B equals results. Results have always been a product of these two factors. Since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I believe it's true, and I think it'll be true for the next 200 years, or at least as long as we still occupy this rock, assuming we manage to do so for that length of time. So the question is not, do we share the interest in being successful? Because I've never met a single person, not a single person in 49 years has visited with me and said, I want to be a loser.
No,
I'd like to fail.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping to come in last this weekend. I really want to suck at this. Can you show me how to suck at this? Because that's my goal. Isn't it funny? No one's ever said that. Now, some people don't know how to be successful. Some people are harder to tip over because they, first of all, don't believe they can be successful. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's that third group who aren't willing to work at becoming successful. And anybody who knows about success understands that it takes sweat equity to be successful.
Yeah.
But everybody wants it. Fair enough? You accept that argument? Everybody wants to be successful? I think that's true too. Yeah. In our personal relationships, in our job, in our hobbies, in everything that we do. Why?
We want to be the best at what we do, but we sometimes don't even know how.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even go as far as to say we want to be the best. The people I deal with want to be the best. There are a lot of other people who just want to be good enough.
Yes, you're
right. They want to be good.
Yeah.
No one wants to be a loser.
No.
So with that in mind, the two variables are critically important to understand. How do we create success? How do we create results? It's a product of A times B. What is A? A is what I personally bring to the party at the moment when my performance is required. Special forces operator going through a door, a SWAT guy taking down a terrorist, a surgeon operating on somebody's brain, a CEO making a presentation to the annual general meeting of 5,000 people, whatever it is, I don't care. In that moment of performance, what I bring to the party in knowledge, skill, experience, in some cases fitness, I have what I have at the moment of that performance. Now, it's not good enough just to have it, I have to bring it.
Yep.
So I also have to overlay the attitude and the effort that I bring to marshal those resources and bring them to the moment of that performance. But let's think about it. If I'm successful in doing that, in my next moment of performance, if I bring my top drawer, honest to God, A game to the party, and let's say for argument's sake that everybody on my squad or my team similarly brings their A game to that moment of performance, are we guaranteed to get the result that we want? We're not.
No, we're not. No.
Why? Because if that were true, what would the performance equation read?
It would be A equal results.
Yeah, and it doesn't say that, so it can't be that simple, right?
No.
And if that was the case, who would not simply bring their A game to what they're doing if they were guaranteed the result they wanted?
Everybody would.
Everybody would.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to be a loser. Everybody wants to be successful.
Yeah. I agree.
So what's that second variable? Because there's a second variable. By definition, the B factors are all the things that are outside of my control. Weather, track conditions if you're a racer, equipment, what my competitors do, what the people around me do, what my own team members are capable of. These are all variables that are outside of my direct control, which can and often do have an impact or an influence on the outcome. They're not always B minus. We're not always the bug. Sometimes we're the windshield and they're B plus. They work in our favor.
Yeah.
Sometimes the B's are very big and they have a meaningful impact on the outcome, to the point where if something breaks on the race car, we might not even finish the race.
Yep.
In other instances, they're minor issues. I brush the wall and bend the suspension a little bit, but I figure out how to drive around it. In the end, it's effectively inconsequential in terms of its impact on the outcome.
Yep.
That's the simplicity of the equation. Here it is. The results that we accomplish in a given situation are always a product of what we bring to the moment of that performance, influenced by the things that we cannot control.
Yep.
You accept that?
Definitely. This makes
sense,
so much sense to me. Yeah.
Intellectually.
And
Here's
just
the thing.
Generally, it's, the B part, it's something that people in day-to-day life, trying to control things you cannot control, creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress because you cannot do anything about it, but yet you still want and try. And
because you want that good outcome.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You've hit it right on the head. That is the core element of this scenario.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, the results we accomplish are a product of what we do, influenced by things that we cannot control.
Yeah.
This is a fundamental truth that's here.
Yep.
And it's easy to understand intellectually.
Yes. Now, applying it is the hard part.
Well, it's not as hard as you think, but the day that you accept the truth of it emotionally is the day that performance anxiety ceases and your general level of anxiety drops dramatically. Here's why. What's the only thing that we can actually control in the performance equation?
The variable A, which is
the variable A.
Yeah, what we
bring to the party.
Yeah.
We can enhance our ability by preparation and training and rehearsal and sleeping well and eating well and doing all the things that we can do to maximize our A game when we do show up to deliver it. Mm-hmm. Right? So we can control A. But the question is, can we control results? The simple answer is no.
No.
We can't control it.
No.
Because we can't control the B factors in the equation. By definition, they're the things we can't control. I've asked athletes at times, racers, for example,
yes,
if you could bring your A game to a particular event, and every member of your team brought their A game to a particular event, and you brought your top drawer A game to that party, would you bet your parents' house that you will win the race?
Well, I don't think they would, because exactly.
No, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't, exactly.
Now, if you have said, yes, I would, and my response is, you're a fool then.
Yeah.
Because I would follow that up with this question. Have you ever been in a situation where something in the engine broke? Or a piece of suspension broke?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you would bet your house on the fact that you're going to win just because you're bringing your A game. Well, they'd say, well, no, obviously not in that case. But that's the thing, isn't it? The truth
Definitely.
is, no one in their right mind would bet on the outcome.
No.
Because they can't control the things they can't control. So here's the emotional truth of it.
Yeah.
And this is probably the thing that has impacted my life personally the most in the last 50 years, is the realization that it's impossible for me to do better than the best I can do in the moment when my performance is required.
Yeah.
Wishing it to be better has never made it better.
No.
Worrying about it not being good enough has never made it better.
No.
Wishing on a result and worrying about a result have never made the result better. In fact, they make it worse. And the reason is, when we start focusing our attention on how we're doing and on the consequences of not getting it done well, our focus of attention shifts away from what we're doing to how we're doing. And that worry that grows because we're focused on something we can't control creates anxiety. Anxiety is a symptom of incorrect focus. Think about it. The only time we have anxiety is when our focus of attention shifts to the future and to worry over the outcome of what we're doing. When you're in your groove as a tactical officer, when you're in that sweet spot, call it the zone, call it the groove, I don't care what you want to call it.
Yeah.
Are you anxious in that moment?
Well,
I didn't say, are you intense? I said, are you anxious when you're in that sweet spot? When you're in your zone?
No, because you're really focused. So you don't.
You're calm. It's a place of calmness. Yeah. Is it possible to be calm and intense at the same time?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's the sweet spot in so many professions. That's the best spot.
Yeah.
So when we are fully engaged in execution, focused on A, there is no anxiety. There's no central processing capacity left over to create anxiety because our focus is fully on what we're doing and not what we're worrying about.
Yeah.
You follow?
So that's the mental switch that you try to install, like to bring your client to make them really not worry about B and apply themselves really hard on A. Therefore, the result has more chances of being really positive.
Yeah, one of the pushbacks I get sometimes, say in a corporate leadership team or something, they say, well, you know what you're doing is you're creating a built-in excuse for people to fail and say, oh, that's a B factor. So that was a B factor. That's why I wasn't successful. When the truth is,
see some people saying that.
You can see it. It might have been because it was actually an A minus, right?
Yep.
And I push back and I say, listen, think about the people that I deal with. For me, for my clients, good results in many instances represent the difference between living and dying, literally. So you better bet your butt that results are important to me because they're critically important to my people. I'm not saying that results aren't important. What I'm saying, what I'm arguing, is that if you want results to be as good as they can possibly be, stop worrying about the result because you're focusing on it when you worry about it. Instead, turn your full attention to the execution of what you're doing because it will create and sustain the mindset that allows you to be calm, confident, and task-focused. Yeah. And that is the delivery that will yield the best result possible. Does that make sense to you?
It really makes sense. And I think that's an important part of your equation. I'm a professional pistol shooter, right? So if we talk about focus, when I go on a course and I got to shoot targets and they move, they swivel, they pop, when I have to shoot, I have to apply 100% of my focus on shooting a target and the principles and mechanics of the firearm. But sometimes my mind is thinking about the next target, and when I do that, I miss my shots because I'm already somewhere else. So I don't apply A properly because I'm worrying about the other one. So I go into B equation, the B part of the equation, then I miss my shot.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I created the rules of the mental road as a simple framework to explain how the way we process information ultimately affects our emotions, our behaviors, and our performance. And rule number 2 speaks directly to how you sabotage yourself in that very instance you just described. Rule number 2 simply says the conscious mind can only actively process one thought at a time. So here's the thing. If you're thinking about, if that's true, and I could prove it in a way that people would not forget. If that's true, if you're thinking about the next target, what can you not be fully focused on at the same moment?
The current target.
The target you're on right now, the current target. And isn't that why we make mistakes?
Yes.
Because our mind is in the future, even though the future might be 3, 4, 6, 8 seconds away.
Yeah.
And because our head is over there, it can't be here. And yet our performance is defined by what we do right here and right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the person who blows a target, who goes to the next target and is thinking about the target they just messed up.
That too.
What's more likely to Sure, what's more likely to occur? We're going to mess that one up too. Why? Because again, our thoughts are directed to what happened on the last target, to the past, and yet our actual performance is defined by what we focus on in this moment on the target we're shooting right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. So when you work with clients, how do you bring them to that kind of thought process with consistency?
If it was that simple,
yep,
I would be called a magician, not an educator. And
a performance specialist.
A performance magician, right?
Yeah.
And it would cost 10 times what it does. And there'd be a lineup from here in Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles waiting to get in.
Yeah.
It's not that easy, but it's simple enough. How do I do it? Education is the first step. Exactly what we're talking about now, giving people a frame of reference.
So they understand.
To understand how we shoot ourselves in the foot, how we mentally sabotage ourselves, and how we can avoid that trap. So education is a big part of it. And I have written 3 books. I think you're aware of those books.
Yes.
The first one, if you'll allow me a moment, I'll just tell you what each book is about.
Yeah, for sure.
The first book was my first foray into this. And to be honest, the reason I wrote it is actually because I was going in for some back surgery a number of years ago. And I had a friend who went in for a relatively straightforward procedure and never came out. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've learned an awful lot in over 4 decades. It would really be a shame if I croaked and took it with me. So I decided to write the first book. The first book is called Performance Thinking, Mental Skills for the Competitive World and for Life. And it describes the underlying equation, some basic truths about focus, and some other things about how we process information, and discusses the rules of the mental road framework. And then at the end of the book, I actually walk through people through the process of developing a personal act model. And the personal act model answers this question, Mathieu. So what? Now that I understand this, how do I take control and change? How do I do the thing that you're talking about? Yep. The act model process is the methodology of self-critique and self-correction that we can use to reprogram our unconscious mind to optimize our performance rather than sabotage it. It's a methodology. It is a process. It is the one that I teach and that my clients all over the world use to great success in their various professions. The second book I wrote was a skinnying down of some of the concepts in the first one. It's called Helping Kids Perform. Mental skills every parent, teacher, and coach should master. And it was something I wrote as a result of the frustration of seeing adults who thought they were supporting the performance needs of young people that were in their charge, whether it's their own kids or their coaching or in the classroom, who don't understand the principles we're talking about, and who thought that by getting people, kids, to focus on how they're doing on results, that would make them more successful, when in fact it blows up in their face. And it's what creates anxiety and actually hurts and limits performance. So I created another book, adapted it with less of the science and more examples of how you can communicate these principles to your children so that they can do better. Now, I snuck up on the parents in this book because it's not a book for kids. It's actually a book for the parents or the adults.
Okay.
People think, oh, I'm interested in this book because I can help my kid. I can get my kid to do better. So they think it's going to be for their kids.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but it's going to be for their kids indirectly by not having the parents sabotage the kids and to teach them the right way to think in the face of challenging moments and the right way to think in the recovery process from adversity and failure, because they always will, just like we all do.
Yeah.
And the third book was a niche book that grew out of my work with the law enforcement community and the special forces community, and it really applies to the first responder world. It's called Performance Thinking for Law Enforcement. And what I've done is I've adapted the examples and the other concepts to talk about examples in that world and how those individuals can use the principles to optimize their performance and increase their safety in a challenging, often dangerous world that the first responder world is. And I use first responder pretty broadly there to incorporate my military special forces guys, the law enforcement guys, ambulance, etc. So that's the education process. And then I have a process that is 2 days here. Now I've adapted that to do my first day over the web. Because the first day is an education day, and I've started that process now with a number of clients from a distance. And the second day will be when we get to the point where people feel comfortable traveling again, they'll travel here. And the second day is a comprehensive profiling over 9 hours of skill sets, concentration, timing, memory, decision-making, visual scanning ability, visual tracking ability. And as a consequence, how do they use that experience to shape their thoughts, to maximize their performance rather than sabotage it? And then that comprehensive program incorporates a mentoring process over the period of 6 months or a year, depending. And then I do the same thing with my corporate and sports teams, where I have a full day seminar, face-to-face seminar program. Each person completes a dozen online questionnaires that target competitive anxiety and confidence and a number of other variables. So everybody gets to understand their own personal situation. And then, depending on the circumstances, that can evolve into a mentoring process as well. So that's kind of how I do the things I do. But fundamentally, Mathieu, the first and most important step is understanding how we mentally sabotage ourselves and how we can avoid that trap, because everybody does it.
Yeah. So for the general population who would be interested in understanding this a bit more, your first book would be the one to go with, right?
It has a little more science in it. If you want a simpler version, you could go with the second book. It's also a little less expensive because it's shorter, and some people are not big readers. The second book is shorter by, I think, 60 or 70 pages than the first, because I've taken out some of the science. But it also has examples for kids. So in some cases, I've had a lot of people actually acquire both the first one because it gets into the background information that they want to understand more deeply, and then the application of that to the kids' environment. Now, it's interesting because the second book, Helping Kids Perform, Mental Skills Every Parent, Teacher, and Coach Should Master, I could change the cover on that to read, Helping Employees Perform What Every Corporate Leader, the Mental Skills Every Corporate Leader Should Master. And the only thing I need to do is change the examples in the book from kids to older kids, employees.
Yeah, there you go.
Because the concepts and the principles are exactly the same.
And to get those books for people that want them, they can go on your website, Performance Prime. What is it again?
.com.
Yeah.
Or if they want, here's an even easier way to get at some information.
Yeah.
You mentioned the webinar that we did, and until June 1st, the May 11 webinar in its entirety, it's an hour and 6 minutes long.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Will be up on my YouTube channel till June 1st. Okay. There's also a tab on my link tree that will, if you're interested in looking at my books, you can click on that and it'll take you right to the book page where it talks about the 3 books. There's also links to my social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram and so on. If people are interested in following me, that's a way to get information about the different things I'm doing and some of the principles and concepts that I talk about. And the easiest way to get to that is to go to my link tree, and the simplest portal is this: www.drdallaire.net. That's DRDALLAIRE.net, and that will take you to my link tree, which allows you to easily access all those things I'm talking about.
And for our listeners, don't worry about it. I'll put all the links in the description, so all you'll have to do is click on them, and they'll bring you to everything you need. Your YouTube channel you were mentioning is under what name?
Performance Prime.
Performance Prime.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can link through. In fact, from that drdallaire.net portal on my link tree, you can click on the YouTube video, and it will play it right there on your screen. All right. So it makes it pretty easy.
All right. Well, for this first part of our interview, we're going to stop here. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back to the second part where I want to talk more about how to apply focus and how to apply the proper focus in any given situation. So how would people shift their focus from, like you said in the webinar, narrow to broad to back to narrow so that they can be successful in any given situation? Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right.